Welcome in, everybody. This is Two Way Tonight. I'm Mark Halperin with lots of devices going here. Try to keep up with the news. And there's still a lot of news. President Trump has not announced any action against Iran and not initiated any as far as we know. But it is being widely reported that that is under consideration. We talked about it this morning. And I will spend a fair amount of the top of the show here updating you on where things stand there. There's a few other stories, a few involving immigration. The Secretary of Homeland Security, Kristi Noem, has gone to the hospital by ambulance. We'll look for more information on that. And there's still some fallout from the Minnesota shooting, some news on reconciliation. So we'll talk about all that. And we've got two great guests. If you look up Washington Insider in the dictionary, you don't find a picture of either of our two guests tonight. But if you look up great guy, you do. Ed Rogers and Steve Elmendorf, Republican and Democrat, and they are veteran Washington strategists with broad experience in understanding American politics and the role in the world. And I'm very grateful to have them both here tonight on this occasion on what could be, including during the program, an extraordinary moment in American history as President Trump faces what I continue to call potentially the biggest decision of his life, not of this term, not of his presidency, but of his life, because of the implications of what might occur if he does strike. So let's look at a few headlines. Again, I'll run through some news and then we'll bring in our guests. And then, of course, we'll take your questions. If you're here on the two-way platform, want to be part of the conversation, please raise your hand. If you're watching on X or on YouTube Live, don't raise your hand. Also, note, don't put smack in the chat. Inconsistent with peace, love, and understanding the ethos of this platform. Please don't do that. Reminder, at 7:30 this evening, Eastern time, so 30 minutes after we finish here, we will reconvene for another program, our newest program, Cancer Decoded. An important show, I think, in the history of this company, but also we hope for anyone dealing with cancer or who's dealt with cancer. Dr. Patrick Soon-Shiong, the noted cancer expert who also happens to own the Los Angeles Times. He and I will be here every Tuesday night at 7:30 Eastern to walk through the latest in cancer research and to answer questions that people have. I'll tell you at the top of the show at 7:30 Eastern, I'll tell you why we're so excited about this program, why we're so proud of it, and why we think it could represent a new way for people to deal with disease and trauma. So please join us for that at 7:30 Eastern. Again, 30 minutes after we finish here. Okay, number one, Sam, widely reported now that the U.S. is considering some sort of strikes against Iran. The expectation is that would involve dealing with Iran's nuclear capability, potentially the use of the B-52s and the bunker busting bombs that has been discussed by previous presidents quite a bit, because this has been in play for quite some time, and all the issues around that, geopolitical, technological, et cetera, are being discussed again, including the issue of what happens if you drop giant bombs on nuclear material and the implications for harming a lot of people's health if that happens. So that's being discussed. President Trump active on social media today, number two, demanding unconditional surrender on the part of the Iranians. He's not interested at this point, it appears, from his social media posts, in negotiating some sort of back and forth. He simply would like an unconditional surrender. He also posted on Truth Social that we know where the Ayatollah is, and he'll allow the Ayatollah to live for now, but made it clear that his patience was running out. Extraordinary story in the New York Times, number three. The New York Times gets a lot of heat, a lot of criticism, often deserved, but they continue to be an extraordinary institution. They can produce, often under multiple bylines, the kind of journalism that very few others around the world can do. This story, who's reporting, I can vouch for, is very good. How Trump shifted on Iran under pressure from Israel, spent the first few months of his term holding back Israel's push for an assault on Iran's nuclear program. With the war underway, his posture has gyrated as he weighs sending in the U.S. military. It's a very good look at the last few months and a very up-to-date story on the president's current deliberations. If you subscribe to the New York Times or can outbox the paywall, I recommend it to you. Amongst the things you'll see in the story are, as always, Benjamin Netanyahu understands American politics as well as any American. And he very cleverly, I wouldn't say played the president, but was well aware of how to move this along to get what he wanted out of the relationship. And there's been clear disagreement on the intelligence, the question of what exactly Iran's capability is currently, and how threatening. The vice president on social media today kind of broke his silence and basically said, it was quite a long post, but he said on Twitter, he said, the president is America first. He deserves the benefit of the doubt that he's protecting America's interests in whatever he decides to do. And the vice president made clear he may decide to strike militarily against Iran. There's various posts. I don't know how much to credit them. You can put up number 4, please. Various credible reports that Iran plans some sort of retaliatory strike beyond what they've launched at Israel. Here's the New York Times headline, and others are reporting something similar. Iran is preparing missiles for possible retaliatory strikes on U.S. bases. This would, of course, be an escalation of the conflict, and would be something that the president of the United States could use to justify in getting involved actively in the war, more actively than the U.S. has been covertly helping Israel up until now. And of course, one of the pauses, perhaps on the president as he weighs the decision about whether to act before any strike against the United States, is the fact that the U.S. hasn't been hit, and the United States would be entering a war of preemption, just as Israel has, rather than retaliating for any Iranian activity. Another post from the president, number 5, simple social media post: unconditional surrender. Doesn't say who he's referring to, presumably not Dorothy, but Iran. Here's number 6. This is the post I mentioned earlier. We know exactly where the so-called supreme leader is hiding. He's an easy target, but is safe there. We are not going to take him out, kill, at least for now, but we don't want missiles shot at civilians or American soldiers. Our patience is wearing thin. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Finally, from the president on the social media post, and again, we haven't heard from him today. He had a long meeting with his national security team in the Situation Room. Several news organizations reported that there was a difference of opinion within the administration about what to do. This is a post from the president. Note the first word: we, not Israel. We now have complete and total control of the skies over Iran. Iran had a good sky trackers and other defensive equipment, and plenty of it, but it doesn't compare to American-made, conceived, and manufactured stuff. Nobody does it better than the good of USA. So where are we? Well, we presumably Israel will continue to do things through the air and through espionage against Iran, and we wait to see if the president of the United States acts. I believe this morning what I believe now, which is he's likely to act, and that the conditions that might prompt him to move forward are very distinctive, and they include the fact that Iran is weaker than it's been in this decades-long debate, more than decades-long debate that previous presidents have dealt with, of should you help Israel eliminate Iran's nuclear and ballistic missile capability. They've had proxies that could inflict damage to the United States and Israel all over the place, and they've had a robust air capacity, and those two things are gone, and their allies are gone. And I continue to be struck by the relatively restrained reaction in the United States, but in Saudi Arabia, Gulf states, Europeans. This is not a rallying around Iran. People are not threatening Israel with destruction or boycotts or criticizing the relationship with the United States and Israel. There's some of that, but nothing on the level of what we would have seen in the past. And that is a dog not barking that could encourage the president to act. So Iran's capability diminished, terrorism and air world reaction relatively muted, and it kind of raises the question of why not. I heard that from more than one person today, including someone very senior on Capitol Hill. Why not? What are the reasons to not do this beyond the unpredictable and beyond the fear that the unexpected could happen if there is a U.S. strike? As I said, there's some other news out in the world today. related particularly to immigration. We'll talk about some of that if we have time with our guests. But I'll remind you again, Kristi Noem rushed to the hospital in an ambulance today, and we'll continue to track that. So in a moment, I will bring in our two guests, Steve Elmendorf and Ed Rogers. Honored to have them both here. And then if you want to be in on the conversation, please raise your hand. And I'll remind you, we have a new sponsor on this program. Honored to be brought to you by Cozy Earth. They're our new sponsor here now, and they're here just in time because it is summer. And summer's warm, at least summer's warm where I live. And that means I'm not really interested in being hot. And that means during the day, I'm not interested in being hot. I'm wearing my tees. And at night, I'm not interested in being hot as I sleep. Cozy Earth has an incredible process of manufacturing, whether it's sheets or pants or shirts. They use viscose from bamboo. It naturally wicks away heat and moisture from your body, and it helps you sleep. If you want to get a good night's sleep this summer, I recommend you try the sheets. If you want to be comfortable during the day, the tees and the pants. It comes with a 100-night sleep trial. If you buy the sheets, you can try them during the very hottest months, at least where I live, occurring right now. If you don't love them, simple. You can return them, no hassle. Chances are you will not, but you can. And if you do keep them, they come with a 10-year warranty. All their bedding products can be returned over the course of 10 years or replaced. That is a decade of cool, quality sleep. So what do I recommend to you? I recommend right now you upgrade your summer sleep. You head to cozyearth.com. And if you do that and you use the code TWOWAY, guess what? Use the code TWOWAY at cozyearth.com, 40% off their sheets, their pajamas, and more. So again, go to cozyearth.com, use the code TWOWAY, 40% off. And guess what? It's good for me too, because it means you're listening and reacting. Cozy Earth, sleep cooler, lounge lighter, stay cozy. Again, grateful to the folks at Cozy Earth for sponsoring the show. All right, let's bring in our two leading experts. And I couldn't be happier to have them here. Both people I've known for a great deal of time, and both people who know a lot about a lot. First, Ed Rogers, Republican strategist. Ed, welcome. Thank you for coming back on Two-Way.
Hey, good to be here. Thanks for having me.
While we bring Steve Elmendorf in, just tell me your broad view of what's happening at the White House now, and how you see the choices that the president and his advisors face about what to do.
Well, I think, to state the obvious, things are evolving. Trump has options today that maybe he didn't have, or he didn't think he had just a few days ago. And he could be in a position where the Iranian ruthless regime is teetering and he can make a difference, or he can be part of bringing it down. In my own case, hey, I remember the euphoric win that H.W. Bush had against Saddam and kicking the Iraqi army out of Kuwait. You know, the political half-life on that was about 20 minutes. So let's all remember that. No matter how good things might go, I worry, like everybody else does, and you mentioned earlier, that there's a lot of retaliation and retaliatory potential that Iran still has in the region. I talked to a former senior military officer earlier today, and he reminded me of 2019 when the Iranians showed what they could do with drones, hitting some of the some of the Saudi targets and their oil infrastructure with no warheads, just to make holes and to show the world what they were capable of. It would be very low tech for them to stop oil from the Straits of Hormuz. So there's a lot that the Iranians do if they're able to do it. And decapitation, we saw what happened with Saddam. We saw what happened in Tripoli with Gaddafi. So a moment of euphoria can quickly be overwhelmed by unpredicted, unknown consequences on the ground. A lot of what matters lies in front of us, not behind.
Thank you, and thanks for being here. Steve, welcome back. Grateful to have you here. Do you see the logic now different than every previous American president faced with the option of using the B-52s? Do you see the logic now for America getting involved, or does it seem more opaque or ambiguous to you?
I think this situation is fraught with danger, to state the obvious. I think when you mentioned earlier the excellent reporting from the New York Times when you read the story yesterday about what it would in fact entail to attack this nuclear site, that we are no longer just supporting Israel in an attack. U.S. B-2 bombers are going over the site, bombing it repeatedly over many days in all likelihood. The chance of loss of life increases. That, you know, the United States of America is prosecuting this case. And I maybe that's what we ought to do. I would like to see, frankly, more consultation by the president and his team, and perhaps less social media. I hope they're talking to a wide range of our allies and other people in the Middle East about what they may or may not do, not just to Bibi. I hope they're talking to very experienced people of both parties in the Congress who know a lot about this before they make a decision. And I hope they're very wary of the consequences of a counterattack from Iran, which could come in all sorts of asymmetrical ways, and of what the reaction of our allies will be. So I think it's, you know, I'm nervous about this. I'm not saying it's not something we should do, but I think we need more information. I hope the president's getting more before he makes a decision.
Hey, Mark.
Yes, sir.
One thing, just again, talking to a friend of mine, our senior military, and I don't want to get too far out of my zone of formally informed political hackery, but evidently the plans have been drawn up for this place, Fordor. I don't even know if I'm saying it right. And the goal isn't necessarily to split it open like a cantaloupe. The goal is to seal it and to disrupt its power supply. And you don't see that mentioned in the stories, that it's sort of an all or nothing type of thing. I think it's more subtle and more nuanced than that, what the possibilities are.
Yeah, they're basically trying to bury it and disable it.
Right.
You both are students of leadership and communication. How would you rate the job that Bibi has done in the last week? Communicating, leading, putting at least subtle pressure on the president, sucking up to the president, which he's done a lot of. Did the interview with Fox on Sunday, did an interview with ABC yesterday. Steve, how would you appraise the job he's done for himself, for his country?
Well, I think whenever something like this happens, you have to admire the extreme competence of the Israelis in all respects. I mean, they have done, when they set out to do something, they do it very well. And they've prosecuted an aggressive campaign and a successful campaign to date against Iran. And the prime minister has communicated, I think, very clearly what they're doing and why they're doing it. It doesn't mean I agree with everything they're doing, or you know, I don't know enough to know all the intel of why they did what they did. There are some credible reports of dispute about whether or not how close Iran was to getting a nuclear weapon, but I think they've done a very good job of what they set out to do.
Ed.
Well, by measure, Israel's done a lot more right than wrong in Washington and with Trump. In addition to, I think, of handling Trump right, part of what they've done that I think has impressed Trump is they pulled some rabbits out of the hat here. The pagers, the relentlessness, the clever intel, the pre-positioning weapons inside of Iran, the successfully targeting of much of the Iran leadership, the hacking of Iran's Air Force communications. It's remarkable, and it's hard not to respect it. And maybe for Trump, it's not hard to want to be part of it and associate America and associate himself with this remarkable string of successes. Trump likes winners.
Trump likes winners. He likes world-class winners. He likes Olympic athletes, NFL stars, you know, opera singers. Trump likes anything that he can say best on the planet.
Well,
and say again, Ed?
I said, well said. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. If you were in charge of the Congressional Affairs Office in this White House, what would you be doing vis-a-vis the Hill? And I'll say, Hill's filled with a bunch of leakers, filled with a bunch of would-be secretaries of state, filled with a bunch of people who will want to second guess what happens. So I'm for co-equal branch. I'm for Congress protecting its four powers prerogative, but they've given up on that long ago. So Ed, if you were head of congressional affairs, what would you be advising the president and chief of staff to do right now?
Tell the Republican caucus to be cool. We don't know what's going to happen coming next, not just because of Trump's unpredictability, but because of circumstances are rapidly changing. Everybody be cool. Don't freelance. Be generally supportive. If you don't know what to say, don't say anything. Follow Rubio. Listen to his people. See what he's saying on TV. Mimic that. Nobody freelance. Everybody stay calm.
Steve.
Well, I think if you want people to stay calm, you need to brief them and consult them. I don't think you have to consult 435 members of Congress. I was in the government at 9/11, and I was in the government many other times when George Bush consulted with the Democratic leadership repeatedly and often and discreetly with a small number of people who had expertise and knowledge. I think if, hopefully everything goes great, but when things go south, it really helps to have talked to people ahead of time, to have briefed them. There are some people in the Congress on both sides of the aisle, the chairman and ranking members of the Armed Services Committee, the Intel committees, who know a lot, who have a lot of context and depth, and who should be consulted because you may need them to help you along the way. And you certainly should always talk to the top 4 leaders before you do anything like this.
Are you guys struck by what I'm struck by, which is the muted reaction of other countries to what Israel's doing?
A good question. And I've seen it compared to how the Palestinian cause has an issue. Well, there's never been sort of a pro-Iran regime foothold in America or elsewhere, for that matter. I mean, the Palestinian cause has had a foothold in the Arab world and in American politics. There's no such thing as a constituency, a political constituency for the Iranian regime in American politics, and very little in Western politics overall. So I think the Democrats who want to oppose Trump, who want to find fault in what he's doing, are just sort of flat-footed. And there's really no place to go. It's not like the Iranians are good guys. It's not like they have some sort of sympathetic element here of again, a foothold in American politics. No way.
Now, I haven't heard any Democrats who are, expressing concern about or expressing support for the Iranians. What I've heard Democrats say is, as many Republicans also say, is you ought to consult with Congress when you do these things. Congress, and I know the Trump administration is not particularly interested in consulting with Congress on a lot of issues, but certainly I think issues of paramount national security that could turn south on us, we really need to have a group of people in Congress who you've talked to, consulted with, listened to.
Okay. Barack Obama is doing an event tonight in Connecticut with Heather Cox Richardson. Steve, what would you like to hear him say, if anything, about this?
Well, he knows a lot. He's obviously spent a lot of time on the region. He did his own deal with Iran, which unfortunately I believe was a good deal, which Donald Trump should not have withdrawn from. And I'd be very interested in what he has to say. I think it's, the former president is both astute and educated and knows a lot about all this and has spent a lot of time there, and be interested in what he has to say.
What should he say?
I would never deign to tell Barack Obama what he should say about something. He knows a lot more about this than I do.
Okay.
This is another example of consultation, which, in a past world, the president, would have consulted with someone like him or Bill Clinton or George Bush. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe he has, maybe he hasn't. People who've been in this seat who've had to make these kinds of decisions.
Yeah, I hope they're consulting James Baker. That would be one of my first choices. Don't know if there's great ties there or not. All right. Again, we're going to bring in your comments and questions in just a little bit. If you'd like to be part of the conversation, you're here on the two-way platform, please raise your hand. Michael Granoff, we'd love to take you live from your shelter if you can come in. Here we go. All right. Here we go. Here's Michael Granoff in Tel Aviv with his camera. There he is. Michael, remind me what time it is in Tel Aviv.
The Wi-Fi is not terrific in the bomb shelter. So can you hear me?
That's fair. That's fair. Not every bomb shelter has good Wi-Fi. What time is it in Tel Aviv? All right. Let's see.
After midnight.
We'd stop your video. Let's see if it's better. Remind me to get Michael good Wi-Fi in a bomb shelter for Christmas or Hanukkah. All right. Unfortunately, Michael, it's not working. We'll work on that, see if we can bring Michael back. Let's talk about a few other things. And again, if you want to get in on the conversation and you're in the two-way platform, please raise your hand. Okay. New York City Comptroller and mayoral candidate Brad Lander was arrested by ICE today. Number 9, please. Let's look at that.
Do you have a judicial warrant? Do you have a judicial warrant? Can I see the judicial warrant? Can I see the warrant? I will let go when you show me the judicial warrant. Where is it? Where is the warrant? I have it in my hand here. You're obstructing. You're obstructing. I would like to see the warrant. I will let go. I take to see the warrant. Put him in custody. No! Take him back. Take him in. Take him in. Take him in. Step back. Step back. Step back. You don't have authority. You don't have authority to arrest U.S. citizens. Step back, sir. You don't have the authority to arrest U.S. citizens. Say that. Step back, you don't have. I'm not obstructing. I'm standing right here in the hallway. I asked to see the judicial warrant. By asking for a judicial warrant? You don't have the authority to arrest U.S. citizens asking for a judicial warrant. Stay back, please. Stay back. Stay back. Stay back. No, ma'am. For your own safety. For your own safety.
I can't believe you're arresting him.
Where are you taking him? Hello?
Hi,
You have no authority to arrest U.S. citizens. Where are you taking me? And with what authority?
I think there is too.
Why are you arresting
And with what authority?
And where are you taking him?
Step back, guys. Step back, please. Security detail. This number 1 is going to go with him, all right? Hang on, please, number 1. Hold on.
Okay, so this is of a piece with some other stuff we've seen of arrests or detentions of Democratic elected officials. It's a moment that I would say calls for maximum peace, love, and understanding, because although I don't read the chat, I glance at it. Red America looks at that and calls it a stunt. Blue America looks at that and says Donald Trump's government is trying to intimidate free speech and Democratic office holders by incarcerating them. I'm told he's been released. Here's number 10, Mike Lawler, frequent two-way guest, Republican congressman from New York, not New York City. Gonna have to make that bigger. Let's see. My colleagues in government, just because you have a title does not give license to touch, assault, resist, or interfere with law enforcement. Furthermore, stop using this as a means of self-promotion in an effort to make yourself relevant in advance of an election. And again, he is running for mayor, so he's got some reason to want to be prominent. Sam, if you could pin the guest back. Steve, start with you. What's your general view of do both sides have a point here, or do you just think this is an abuse of power by Donald Trump?
Well, I think it's an abuse of power by ICE, which I guess you want to ladder it up to Donald Trump. I think the ICE agents have been too aggressive. I think they've been, instead of trying to de-escalate situations, which is what a lot of law enforcement are trained to do, they seem to always be trying to escalate it. I don't understand why they have to wear masks. I think that is I don't get that. I think it's a bad look. And I think that it is, I think that these situations, that video, I couldn't really tell who was in the right or the wrong there. I certainly watched the Padilla video, and it was clear to me that Senator Padilla identified himself and that they escalated that situation totally unnecessarily. And I just think that everybody needs to dial it down. And it is okay to express your First Amendment rights. It's okay to express your opinion, and you shouldn't be tackled by ICE agents when you do that.
Steve, what about the argument that they're vulnerable, they're out there trying to do their jobs, and they can't take for granted who might be a threat or who might not, and they need to err on the side of caution? Is that something you credit at all?
Again, I think I have great respect for law enforcement. I think they need to be careful, but I don't think I think in every case I've seen so far, they are escalating a situation which did not need to be escalated.
Okay. We're still working on Michael Granoff's connection. Ed Rogers, what are your thoughts on this general phenomenon in that Lander video?
Well, it's theatrics. I mean, the video you just showed is a campaign video of his. It was filmed by his press secretary, not by legitimate news outlets. And I think that theatrics kind of speaks to the moment. It's probably a net plus for him that he orchestrated and pulled that off. It's probably a net plus for Trump and the people that want the ICE agency that want the deportations to continue and to be aggressive if they need to be, and to not let Democrat politicians interfere with the deportations that are underway. And so you're in a world where it's good among some Democrats to associate yourself with protecting the illegal immigrants, whereas among Republicans, it's the very thing you don't like about Democrats. So that's just going to play itself out through the political season. And Padilla's no different. He orchestrated some theatrics, and it's probably good for him, but it's also good for Trump. So we will see. And I think we'll see more of it.
I disagree. I do not think, I think some things are good for Trump. I think this aggressive action against people who do not appear to be actually threatening is not good for Trump. I think that if you look at some of the recent polls, in fact, people think they've gone too far in some of these deportations. And in fact, people around Donald Trump think he's gone too far in deportations. They want to dial it back. They're having a dispute internally about farm workers and hotel workers and restaurant workers. So I think they may think they have a good issue, but sometimes you take a good issue and you take it too far. And I think they are taking it too far on deportations and on how they're treating legitimate elected officials who are expressing their point of view.
Okay, thank you both for that. I appreciate the reasoned tones you used. Michael Granoff is here from the shelter. Michael, what time is it in Tel Aviv?
It's 1:30 in the morning, which is why I generally don't watch 2 Tonight live.
Yeah.
But the Ayatollah had other plans tonight.
So Michael is, for those of you who may have not seen before, Michael is a charter member of the two-way community who's lived in both the United States and Israel, has 3 children in the military there, right? 3?
That's right.
And is
and
incredible.
a fourth who's behind me, who was to have graduated from high school last night, but could not because of the rockets.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. Tell us your perspective. You sent a great message in this morning when you had to go that, amongst other things, some Americans may be surprised. Your view of Israeli public opinion is not everybody wants the U.S. in this war. Explain why.
Well, because we have never asked anyone else to fight for us, and that's a point of principle for many people here. You know, it is the case, and I've always believed, even when I was living in America, that Iran is a threat to America. Once you can develop the ballistic missile, you can develop an ICBM. And you know what they say, death to America, death to Israel, first the little Satan and then the big Satan. But nonetheless, this is our fight in Israel first and foremost. And I think we're doing such a good job so far that we don't necessarily need the help. Now, it's true, the U.S. could be a lot more efficient with the addition of the weapons that we don't have, the really heavy bombs. But you know, there's a split opinion, and I'm ambivalent myself about whether it's the right thing for the U.S. to get involved. But it sure seems like the president is interested, and it sounds like the president's interested in more than just Ford out, which is the main thing that's been talked to.
You mentioned your canceled graduation. Are people going to work in Israel now? Are people going out to dinner, or is everything shut down? I was told, except for food delivery people, there's not much happening on the streets.
Yeah, it's somewhat like COVID. There are regulations. You can't gather in groups. There's no synagogue, for example, but you're allowed to have like prayer services in the house up to enough people that can fit into the shelter in the place. So yeah, I went to my office yesterday just for a little bit to see what the situation was in downtown Tel Aviv. But most people are staying close to home, and no, we actually had 2 weddings in the community that were canceled the last 2 nights. The prime minister's son's wedding was also postponed the other night. So there are prohibitions on gathering, and so people staying close to home for the most part.
One more question for me, and then I'll turn you over to Ed and to Steve. We've seen since October 7th, kind of a through line to today, we've seen times where Bibi has been more popular and less popular. How are people feeling about his performance over the last week there?
I think people look. It's very clear. Bibi made a huge strategic error when it came to Hamas and Gaza, and thought that the having the fence and having the technology and all of that was enough, and that they were deterred. And what we learned is that our enemies unfortunately cannot be deterred. But it's clear that when it came to Hezbollah and Lebanon, and when it came to Iran, um, he was ready, and I think across the board he would get extremely high marks for the way that this has been prosecuted. By the way, uh, doesn't necessarily mean anything for next year's election. Just as George H.W. Bush was at 91% after the Gulf War, lost the next year. Churchill won World War II, lost the next year. So we'll have to wait and see what happens.
Yeah. How have the people who might be prime minister next, how have they spoken out?
Um, Today was the day in which the prime minister briefed the opposition leader, Yair Lapid, and the pictures were extremely warm. When you see these pictures, usually of these, I think that they're briefings that are necessitated by law, but they're usually the body language is not warm. And today it was instinctively warm. Naftali Bennett, who lives about a block from here, has also spoken out extremely in support of government's action. So, as I said to you a few days ago, I think everyone understands that this was potentially an existential threat, and the support is extremely wide, about 92% of what I've seen.
Ed.
That's 92%, but it does remind me of H.W. Bush in 91 and 1990. I was in the White House. I remember it well, still traumatized by what occurred after the fact. But Michael, what would be the result today if Bibi ran for re-election? How would it come down?
If it was today, I would imagine he'd do quite well, just because of how enormous these events have been these last several days, and how well everything seems to have gone. But in general, I think most people, as the polls were, with Biden, even people who supported Biden didn't want him to run for re-election. And I think the majority of Israelis think it's going to be time for a change. Thinks a lot of people thought that before October 7th. Since it's going to be quite an interesting election next year, no matter how the rest of this war goes.
I'll let you go, but has
Yeah,
the
go ahead, Ed. Go ahead.
battle become a sideshow? Is it? Where is it?
Has Gaza, you said?
Has the battle in Gaza become a sideshow? Where is it in the country?
Not for those of us who have kids there, but it's look. The hostages are still front of mind for Israelis, and you see the pictures everywhere. People talk about it everywhere, and the families are very present. And obviously, it's been overshadowed for the last few days, but nonetheless, it's still very present in everyone's mind. And maybe one of the good things here is that the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, that has become increasingly skilled at delivering aid to Gazans, has had a chance to get things even better organized without the spotlight as much. And from what I've read, has been delivering 2 or 3 million meals a day, something like that, which I think is actually maybe one of the most important developments since the beginning of the war, because that was really Hamas's lifeline, was their hijacking of all the aid that came in and then selling on the black market. That was their only source of income, and it was also the source of legitimacy if the population could only get their food from Hamas. So there is an alternative that does actually seem to be ramping up very well at this point. I think that's a positive development.
The
Steve.
Hamas role in food distribution is underreported in America. I'll turn it over to you, Mark.
Okay, Steve. Thank you, Ed. Steve.
Thank you, Michael. All of us admire the Israeli people's courage, the Israeli people's fortitude, whatever we think about Bibi. It is, as I said, it's been an amazing, well executed operation, and the Israeli people and army deserve an enormous amount of credit. Do you think if on the it's it's even hard in this situation to bring up the politics, but Bibi is a very polarizing figure. Is it if he is replaced, is he replaced by someone of his own party, or is he replaced by the opposition party? Do you have the sort of polarization that we have here in terms of the two parties and multiple parties in your case?
Yeah, look, my impression is that he intends to. We just got the all clear, so my son is leaving the shelter. My impression is that he intends to run again, even though he'll be I think 76 next year, and therefore I don't. If that happens, there won't be an opportunity for somebody within Likud to emerge. Now there really isn't a left in Israel such as it was. And that's been not just a function of the last 20 months, it's been a function of since the Second Intifada 15, 20 years ago. But the opposition parties, which are really, I would say, more centrist as it's defined through the conflict, there's some interesting things that are happening beneath the surface beyond the formal opposition parties. Some movements that have some interesting young people and new energy and new ideas and kind of a time for a change kind of attitude. So, I think it'll be competitive. I think one danger is that in my mind. And there's not to take it in a tangent, but I think Alvin Bragg is in large measure responsible for Donald Trump getting the Republican nomination as easily as he did. And I think that there's a lesson in that for many areas of life, actually, but certainly for this. And the more that that it is perceived that Bibi is attacked unfairly or not. There are plenty of reasons for people to oppose him, but there are plenty of people that oppose him for the wrong reasons, and the more that happens, the stronger he can become. So I would just caution those who would like to see a change, not to be Alvin Bragg.
Yeah, Michael, when you get an all clear, how does the government know that the Iranians aren't going to start firing 5 minutes later?
Oh, that actually just happened. This is the second time in the last hour we've been down here. If there's another barrage, we'll get a notice. The way that they do it these days, and this has been evolving over the course of the war, we had, remember, rockets from Gaza, rockets from Lebanon, rockets from we still get rockets from Yemen. That gets overshadowed now, and then occasional drones and things from Iraq and other stuff. So we're well versed in this. There's a pre-warning now when there was a launch, and even in this war, there have been pre-warnings because they can see that they're setting up for a launch. And then it just rings your phone and it says, be near a shelter, be ready. Then you get a siren, and that siren is outside, but also on the phone. And no matter what mode you have your phone in, as many silence and notifications off as you have, it'll still ring and buzz and give you a get to the shelter message. And we didn't actually have an all clear until this phase of the war. It was generally you go in for 10 minutes and you're done. But here, because of the nature of these ballistic missiles coming from so far and the interceptors being so high and the uncertainty about when actually everything has settled, they ask you to stay in until there is an all clear. So that's what we do.
All right, last question on that. People are being killed. Some people have been killed. Are they being killed in shelters, or are they being not adhering to the warnings to get to a shelter, or there aren't warnings always?
That's a good question, and it's a little bit of all of the above. The biggest catastrophe we've had is in a town called Bat Yam, a little bit south of Tel Aviv, where a rocket fell into the residential neighborhood and caused enormous destruction across many multifamily residences. And in that case, there were a number of fatalities. As I understand it, some of them were not in their shelters. There was another instance in another town nearby where rocket came like directly at the shelter, and that's however good the shelters are, you got a ballistic missile with a direct hit, it's not going to protect you. The shelters are because, if you're anywhere nearby the fall, when there's shrapnel and other things, that's what these are designed to protect from. And remember, our interception rate is still, I think, 80 or 90%. So most of the rockets they're firing are not landing at all, but they're firing enough of them that those that are and get through, depending exactly how they land and where, can be deadly even with the protection of the shelter.
Michael, thank you. My best to your kids, and we're grateful to you for coming on, and hope you can get some sleep tonight.
Hope so. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you.
Sure.
Ted, welcome in. Tell folks who don't know where you are and what's on your mind for Ed and for Steve.
Hi there, Mark. My name is Ted Snowgrove. I'm in Denver. Moved here 3 weeks ago from San Francisco, where I was 30 years, but I'm originally Minnesota boy, so I'm still wearing my Twins gear. Military veteran, Navy. My dad was Navy pilot. My son's an Army pilot in the California Guard. Real busy right now down in Southern California. My brother was an Air Force pilot, so a lot of military background. At this moment, the thing I'd like to ask you guys is, thinking asymmetrically, my understanding is from people who've spoken to me is that there's a tremendous amount of intelligence on what the mullahs do in their private lives. The mullahs have been way worse in terms of how they've trafficked in young people than the Catholic Church ever was, by a factor of a lot, according to people who've looked at some of the reports coming out of the Middle East on what the mullahs actually do in their private life. There's an opportunity to drive a huge wedge between the mullahs and their people who don't like them already by actually putting this stuff out there. So I'd love to see the Israelis and the Americans actually put out the evidence they've got to show what the mullahs are doing in the background that they've hidden all these years. I would also like all the banks in Switzerland that are holding on money to be told, you got 24 hours to put the bank balance out there. That's how we're going to rebuild Gaza. We're going to take back all the money that the mullahs took, a lot of which was funneled by, Obama and Kerry. We should take all the money back from the mullahs and use it to rebuild Gaza. And the Qataris that are funding this, why haven't they been pressured about the hostages that are still being held? Why are these Qatari people getting? So there's asymmetrical things that haven't been tried yet, that aren't on the table yet. I'm wondering if that's ever going to happen or how we think about that. But there's obviously an opportunity to get a lot more aggressive with these people outside the military realm, to put pressure on the leadership to make them change. So I'd like to know what people think of that. Of course, I don't have the evidence on my hands to share with you, but I've been told by a lot of people that it does exist, and the Israelis have hinted at it recently. And I'd love to know what people think about that.
So you just have that from folks orally. You've not seen anything written about it. It's got credibility.
I have seen it written on the internet, but I haven't seen it. I haven't seen proof.
Yeah.
But I have been told by a number, this is kind of multiple ways over multiple years, that there's tremendous evidence that the mullahs have been, and not just at the top level, this is all the way through the madrasas, that there's a tremendous amount of abuse, and a lot of it's documented. It's just not being shared publicly. I don't know why.
Yeah, you'd have a hard time convincing Steve Elmendorf that any religious figure engaged in improper sexual conduct, but nonetheless, Steve, what are your thoughts?
I have no idea. I know nothing about this. I've never read anything about this.
Well, let me ask you.
I have great faith and confidence that the Israeli government, if they have information, and we know the Israelis have the best intelligence in the history of the world, as we've seen what they've done so far. I have no doubt if the Israeli government had intel that would be useful to their cause, that they will use it.
I agree with that. Steve, let me ask the question this way and ask Ed to address it as well. There's a possibility of regime change, right? There's a possibility that there'll be an uprising. What are things both the U.S. Western governments and private sector can do to, in a healthy way, not in a subterranean way, but in a healthy way, try to encourage a peaceful regime change?
Well, I think we obviously have to, assuming if there is a regime change, we have to be supportive of a democratic regime, and we have to economically help them show the people of Iran who hopefully don't want to live under this regime, that the new regime will be economically successful, and we will help them be economically successful.
It's one keying off what you just said. I want all the prominent Iranian American business people, and there are many, to speak out and say that they'll invest in a new rebuilt Iran. I think that would send us a really important signal. Ed, any thoughts on what could be done to encourage peaceful transfer of power, peaceful change to a more democratic government, a more economically free government?
Maybe that's what former President Obama will speak to. he had the chance to try to rally some internal Iranian dissent, and it didn't go so well. So maybe it's there. Maybe there's some potential. And again, offers of economic incentives are the Israelis have learned from our mistakes. Again, in Iraq, in Libya, they have a plan. And who knows who they have on the payroll? They could have a waiting cadre of Iranian generals, of Iranian leaders, and people that are ready to stand up and be part of Plan B without there being, a provisional authority of any type. So I hope the Israelis are in charge of the regime change to the degree and show the competence that they have shown to get to this point.
Amen to that. Ted, thank you. A little earlier today, I interviewed David Mamet. Had him on talk about his new book, but he's got a lot of opinions about the Middle East and about Netanyahu and about Donald Trump. New episode of Next Up is available now on YouTube and podcast locations. Here's a bit of my conversation with David Mamet from earlier today. I find you to be on the optimistic side of how President Trump will do as you project forward. You just said you'll bring peace to the Middle East, for instance. Alternatively, I talked to a lot of very strong Trump supporters who are kind of worried. They're not sure how things like Ukraine, Russia, the Middle East, the economy, the tariffs will turn out. Is that because of your rigid and your rigorous analysis, or are you generally optimistic, or what would you say separates you from those I talked to who are supporters of Trump but less optimistic?
No, I'm not generally optimistic. You're crazy. I'm a Jew. The national model of a Jew is, thank God I'm miserable. No, but what I'm seeing is actual results. What I'm seeing is actions taken which would rationally result in foreseen outcomes, right? Rationally, we could say that forcing people to the bargaining table through tariffs is going to lower prices, right? That may or may not be true. I happen to believe it is true, but it's a rational decision rather than we must be nice to people or we have to consider the blah, blah, or there's the ongoing, what about inflation and the honor of the blah, 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 blah. Because there's always a naysayer for every argument. Rationally, moving the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem would result in sending a message to the world to say the United States is behind Israel's back, right? To say otherwise is irrational because there's no rational motive for keeping the United States embassy in Tel Aviv other than appeasement. It's irrational to say you're going to bring about the intended goal of a nuclear Iran by kissing their ass and throwing money at them and not enforcing the sanctions. That's not going to happen.
All right, my full conversation with David Mamet and my reported monologue on why Donald Trump may well use military force is available now, as I said, on Next Up. Steve, what are you feeling good about regarding the Trump projects currently, if anything?
The Trump project in general?
Yeah. Foreign and domestic. Anything he's doing that you're feeling good about?
I cannot think of anything he's doing currently that I am supportive of.
Okay. Ed, how's your level of optimism? Are you in the Mamet school that this is going to be spectacular, or are you a little worried?
I'm a worrier about white hair, honestly. I worry about reconciliation. I worry about Trump getting across the goal line with a big, significant legislative victory that ushers in a lot of permanent change that is law as opposed to executive order. So yeah, I worry about it.
Yeah. Steve, where are you on reconciliation? You've been pretty bearish compared to some.
I think they're going to pass the reconciliation bill. They won't pass it by July 4th, but they'll pass it by the August recess. I think they'll pass it because in many of these cases, as we've now seen, in both parties, you get these big bills and it becomes a existential political issue of we have to succeed. Failure is catastrophic, and that's where they are. So I assume they'll get it done. I think it's, a terrible bill that's going to have a negative impact on the economy, on the deficit and debt. And the cuts in Medicaid are catastrophic, but they won the election and they'll pass the bill. And then in 2026, we'll revisit the issue.
All right. I want to show you guys one more thing. Sam, this is number 15. We were talking about Senator Padilla before, and we got a little bit sidetracked, I think, because not in a bad way, but because Michael came in. But here's Senator Padilla on the Senate floor today describing being detained by Secretary Noem's team.
I was forced to the ground. First on my knees, and then flat on my chest. And as I was handcuffed and marched down a hallway, repeatedly asking, why am I being detained? Not once did they tell me why. I pray you never have a moment like this. But I will tell you, in that moment, a lot of questions came to my mind. First of all, where are they taking me? Because I know I'm not just being escorted out of the building. Am I being arrested here? And what will a city already on edge from being militarized think when they see their United States senator being handcuffed just for trying to ask a question?
Ed, is this drama over, or has it had some lingering impact on anything, on the debate on immigration or anything else?
I think the dramas are only beginning. Here again, this was some theatrics that he orchestrated, probably a net plus for him in his world. But, to pick a fight and then cry about it on television, doesn't that play to a Democrat stereotype that's not so flattering? I mean, come on, he overdid it. Please.
He did not pick a fight. He asked a question. Asking a question is not picking a fight. Asking a question does not mean you're wrestled to the ground and handcuffed. That is the problem. These people overreact. They escalate a situation. They should have respectfully answered the question or said, sorry, sir, we're not going to answer the question. Let's go have a discussion outside. But you don't send the police at him with handcuffs.
All right. I think Ed is unable to defend his position because he's frozen. I want to thank you, Steve, for joining again. Grateful to you, and hope you'll come back regularly. Really enjoy having you on.
Great to be here. Great to be with Ed, even if he's frozen.
Thank you, Steve. Coming up right now. Sorry, just trying to get my friend Ed off of here. Coming up right now on Two Way, you got two options this hour, 7 o'clock Eastern time. Michael Moynihan's show is on. And Moynihan Report with his guest Roya Hakakian talking about Iran. So please watch Michael's program live, join the conversation. And then 7:30 Eastern time on Two Way. First episode of Cancer Decoded. Really hope you'll join us, whether your family's dealt or you've dealt with cancer or not. This is a new kind of program for us. We want to provide the best information available to anybody, regardless of who you are, about the latest in cancer research, cancer treatment. We want to help people who do have to deal with cancer feel part of a community. And finally, it's a way, those of you who think of Two Way as just a platform for political conversation, it's a way for you to understand our wider goals or wider aspirations about bringing people together who share a common cause, whether it's an interest in something or whether it's an existential fight to deal with a life-threatening disease. So hope you'll join me and the doctor at 7:30 Eastern time, just 30 minutes from now. And of course, I'll be back 9 a.m. tomorrow with Sean and Dan for the morning meeting. Grateful to Michael from Israel and to Steve Elmendorf and Ed Rogers, and grateful to all of you for participating. Hopefully I'll see you in 30 minutes on Cancer Decoded. Thank you.